It's time again for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both President Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Hey, Al, it's hard to imagine seeing anything in American history as unique as what happened yesterday in Washington, D.C., with no less more than 1,000 masked Americans facing the U.S. Capitol, which had been recently breached by far-right extremists. Joe Biden becomes the 46th president of the United States. Wow. Could you give me your thoughts on this memorable day and some key takeaways as President Biden and Vice President Harris start that new administration?
Sure. Yeah, I think yesterday is a great day for America, and America really needed it. The simple, just normal sight of a peaceful transition with the three former presidents of both parties taking part was really important for our country, showed our democracy will endure. And especially in light of just 2 weeks earlier on those very same Capitol steps, seeing insurgents, violent insurgents provoked by the president try to disrupt those democratic processes. I can't think of anything the country needed more than seeing that return to normalcy. Of course, it was sad to see the capital city lined with 25,000 troops and it was, but we did get through it safely, and that was important without disruption. And it was also sad to see so few people celebrate in person. But given those limitations, I thought the inauguration and all the events around it, really beginning with that remembrance on Tuesday night of the 400,000 Americans lost to the pandemic, were produced spectacularly for television. And in a way, it gave millions of people around the country, people who would never be able to come for a normal inauguration to Washington, a chance to participate in their own homes. Now, here are my key takeaways. First, I was sure glad to see Marine One lift off from the South Lawn with President Trump on board. He's done our country so much damage to the very last day when he pardoned some of his political cronies. It sure was time for him to go. Secondly, I was reminded once again what a great and unique country America is, that we're a big country in the greatest sense of that word. I thought President Biden's speech was uplifting. It was empathetic, unifying, and hopeful. He reminded us of who we really are, I believe, and what we can be. Joe Biden wanted to be president his whole life, and on his day, he made it about us and not about him. The contrast with Donald Trump could not have been more stark. Third, I was struck by the inclusiveness of the inauguration. So striking after 4 years of a president who divided us and stoked hate and white supremacy. In that sense, we had a glimpse of what our country has become and what it will become in the future, what it will be in the future. Of course, Vice President Harris's inauguration was an important symbol of that, but young Amanda Gorman, that breathtaking young poet laureate, showed us how inspiring that future can be. Fourth, it was good to see President Biden go to work right away. He issued a number of executive orders, for the mask on the pandemic and to reverse some of the most onerous of the Trump policies. That, as Craig will tell you, that's not unusual. Most presidents do things like that on their first day. But after watching Trump abdicate the presidency for 3 months at least to play golf, it's comforting to know that somebody has his hand on the till. Finally, President Biden really has a foreboding task in front of him. The challenges our country faces are enormous. probably as great as any president has faced since Lincoln, certainly since FDR. And despite the talk of bipartisanship, which I think was sincere and where I think there'll be some progress actually, he has to tackle this cascade of challenges with a Congress nearly split down the middle in both houses in a country that's deeply divided. He's got to reunite and rebuild the country one step at a time. I thought yesterday was a step forward. I do believe that presidential tone matters, and his reinstituting the daily press briefings on the very first day was a very important and good thing. I don't want to sound Pollyannish, but I hope that maybe the best thing that came out of yesterday is that we now have a president who's going to work for us, caring for us, rather than working and caring only for himself.
Craig, not your average inaugural yesterday. Give us your thoughts.
Well, it's surely a different time, and it's surely a different inaugural. There were these moments all day yesterday. I was glued to the set and channel surfing. One of the most remarkable moments for me, I think, was watching Air Force One, beautiful Boeing 747 aircraft with the presidential colors, leave Andrews. It just felt like the nation was exhaling. that the moment had come when, even if you supported this president, there was going to be a significant change, and he was leaving the scene. And at least for me, it felt good because it seemed like symbolically the clock was going to start on something new. I have to confess also that I wondered over the last several days about the wisdom of trying to do this inauguration outside. I remember a remarkable ceremony in which I was fortunate to be present inside the Capitol in 1985, when the weather outside was 7 degrees, and wisely President Reagan and the team putting on the inauguration said, "We know there's not going to be a parade, there's not going to be an outdoor ceremony," and we had a beautiful ceremony inside. It was, the room was filled with far fewer people than actually were able to be outside yesterday, and the broadcast carried around the world, and this symbol of an American president taking the oath of office for his, in that case, second term, was broadcast. I thought, why not do it that way? But almost immediately, when I saw how creative this outdoor inauguration was, I was glad they went outside. I think we all have to be thankful and say a word of thanks to the people who were making sure everyone was protected. The fact that this went off with seemingly no disruption, and if there was one, it wasn't newsworthy, is really remarkable. It took a great show of force, but it was a deterrence that allowed us to go through this transition in as peaceful a way as possible. With a nation that is so used to social distancing and masking, the arrangement, while very unique and different than anything we've seen, I think was extremely well done. It gave members, I saw diplomats there, I saw, obviously the elected officials there on a bipartisan basis, sharing this moment when we inaugurated a president and a very historic vice president. And the world saw that. And I think the world will recognize that America is, in a way, hitting the restart button and beginning a process to deal with issues here at home and around the world. I thought the president's speech was almost a conversation with us in the country. Like Al said, it wasn't, chest pounding about him. It was about the country and what we're going to do together, what we need to do together. And he laid down some very clear markers. Again, I think he and his team followed up on some of the rhetoric in the speech with executive orders that matched the rhetoric point by point, and some of the initial actions taken on healthcare, on immigration, and other things were exactly what he was talking about in his speech. So I really thought the day was a very positive one, as Al suggested, a very positive one for the country. The tasks are very large. I think in many ways, so we've said before here, I think this razor thin margin in the Senate and nearly razor thin in the House gives Biden the ability to move and operate in the way in which he has done and knows how to do so well. He is going to have to negotiate, but there's no side that can say, you know, we're not going to sit down and talk because they can be marginalized. And so I hope as we go forward, it's with a better sense of bipartisanship to really attack these issues that are lying in front of us.
Craig, let me stay with you. There was a different moment, as you say, that was taking place Wednesday morning and at Andrews, and Donald Trump took off in Air Force One for his Florida residence earlier in the day. Is this the last we'll see of Donald Trump? And what do you think most historians will say about the Trump era?
It's certainly not the last we're going to see of him. The question is, where is he going to place his attention? He's going to have serious financial difficulties by all reports, all accounts. He probably, it seems to me, goes back to trying to rebuild his financial structure before he rebuilds a very much destroyed political structure. There's no two ways about it. The history has to record the failure of dealing effectively with the coronavirus as one of the most serious episodes in our history. He was president. You know, he claimed it was no fault of his that this happened, but the facts are quite different. It certainly didn't start here, but actions taken certainly precipitated an unbelievable loss of life that is something that's always going to be part of his presidency. The other major event in his presidency remarkably occurred in those last few days of his presidency on January 6th, where he went to a rally that had been planned for days, if not weeks. He stirred up people and essentially invited them to march to the Capitol to confront those who were denying him the presidency. That violence, that historic moment in our history that no one has seen who's living on the planet today, is part of his presidency. And so while the stock market went up, while judges are across the land of a more conservative nature, while there's things for which he could take credit, the COVID virus and the assault on the Capitol, I think, for him, unfortunately, loom large as part of his record. I don't know that he can rebuild politically. I'm not even sure what a QAnon leader is or looks like, but I read today that one of them said that Trump was weak and they were disappointed. Didn't take long when suddenly their champion abandons the White House and them for them to go in search of someone else. I personally hope that someone else doesn't emerge, but it seems to me that those who have followed him are going to be left a little bit adrift for some period of time. And it'll be really up to the Republican Party, my party, to figure out how to rebuild, for people to step up to this task. I noticed Lindsey Graham's decided to be the champion of Donald Trump. I don't understand what Lindsey is doing. I think there'll be a lot of people auditioning for leadership roles in the party, but I don't think a tight, strong alliance with Donald Trump is the path to success. And I do hope that responsible Republicans will gather together and find a way to rebuild and go forward, and frankly, to work successfully with this president on some other issues that the nation faces.
Al, you have the last word today.
I hope for the sake of the country that the Republicans don't follow Lindsey Graham, because they'll get so dizzy spinning like a top as he can't decide which strong person to follow next. Look, I actually do think yesterday was the last we'll see of Donald Trump in public life. We may see a little bit as he tries to rebuild his life privately, but I don't think we'll ever see him again in public life. To me, historians are going to lump him with Andrew Johnson, as the worst president we ever had. He'll be seen as a president who was twice impeached, who provoked hate, divided the country and was totally unprepared for the biggest challenge. As Craig said, the coronavirus. It cost our country, hundreds of thousands of lives, and it drove the economy into deep recession or even depression. But again, as Chris said, most of all, he's going to be remembered for what happened after the election and for his really acts of sedition. He sort of will be the disloyal president in history, the one who tried to disrupt our democratic processes to stay in power, going to the extreme of provoking that insurrection on the Capitol. But the other part of the final chapter, I think, for Trump has not been written. I don't know whether he'll be convicted in a Senate impeachment trial, even though my guess is the odds are going up with each passing day. But as Craig said, he's going to face enormous debt. And his greatest asset in dealing with that, his brand, has been severely tarnished and greatly diminished. So, and I also think he's going to face criminal prosecutions in New York and maybe in Georgia and maybe in the District of Columbia for actions both before and during his presidency. It's not inconceivable that he could spend the rest of his days or the last of his days either in prison or trying to avoid it. A couple of weeks ago, I made my prediction for the year was that as soon as he lost presidential power and the presidential perks, his friends would abandon him and his political strength would dissipate, and his enemies would, including prosecutors, would be energized. And I think those predictions are going to happen faster than I even thought.
Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thanks so much. We'll see you next week.